In the last video, we talked about integers and how we can use the absolute value, or we can understand integers as arrows. When a positive number is an arrow that goes to the right, and a negative number is an arrow that goes to the left. So we're going to use this method to understand some ideas about addition and subtraction of integers, or in plain terms, how to add integers. Because if we understand these ideas, we're going to observe something pretty interesting that we're going to see at the end. So let's go. Let's go. Now we're going to see our number line, and we're going to understand that, or just remember that any positive number, we're going to see any positive number as an arrow. For example, I'm going to do 4, so I'm going to understand 4 as an arrow that goes from left to right, starting at 0 and going until 4. However, this idea of number seen in this way means that this number can be moved at any place if I want to add it or subtract it. Okay, so let's start with this positive 4 here, and now imagine that I'm going to draw negative 3. So I'm going to draw the number negative 3. So if I want to draw negative 3, it's going to be like an arrow in this direction, negative, showing in this form. Now, again, I can imagine that this negative 3 is this arrow that could be moved at any position of the number line. If I want to put it here, I want to put it here or there. Now, what means adding two numbers? What means that you add two numbers? For example, I want to add two positive numbers. Let's say that I'm going to add the positive number 4 with the positive number 3. So here I can draw another arrow that is positive 3, and I want to add 4 with 3. So if I want to add 4 with 3, I just need to put one arrow that is 4, and then after this positive arrow, I'm going to put the other arrow that is 3, and I'm going to get the addition. In this case, the addition of two numbers is just going to be 4 plus 3, that is going to be 7. Okay, so maybe it's like pretty simple for you what I'm doing, but this is the main idea of adding these two numbers. So 4 plus 3 equals 7. Now, how we can understand the addition of a positive number with a negative number? How can we understand this addition? So I'm going to add the number 4 with the negative number 3. So this is what we're going to do now. And to do it, I'm going to first I'm going to erase this, because we already know that 4 plus 3 is 7. So we're going to do just 4 minus 3. What we can do? So my objective is to add 4 plus the negative number 3. So observe that if I follow the same strategy I use for positive numbers, and for positive numbers, I just need to take the arrow from 0 to 4, and I'm going to put now right next to it my arrow that represents for negative 3. So if I do this, what I'm doing is just adding to positive 4, I'm adding negative 3. But observe that the answer of this number is the same as the subtraction, 4 minus 3. So it means that 4 plus negative 3 is going to be equal to 4 minus 3. And this is the first result that you need to keep in your mind, and it's like kind of the first thing that you need to understand about adding integers or subtracting integers. That is that if you add a negative number, it's going to be the same as subtracting a positive number. Just by doing the arrows, you can observe that if I put right next to a positive number a negative number, it's going to be the same as subtracting this negative number. So this is like the first main result that I want that you keep in your mind, because it's what we're going to do in the next part to find out other type of subtraction. So just to be mindful, subtracting the positive, subtracting the positive is the same as adding the negative. Okay, so subtracting the positive is the same as adding the negative, or adding the negative is the same as subtracting the positive. This is the first thing you need to understand. Now, what happens if I want to subtract a number? Any number. If I want to subtract any number. Now, let's understand in this case that this idea of adding the positive, adding the negative and subtracting the positive, it's kind of doing like the subtraction is the same as adding the opposite. The subtraction is just adding the opposite. So if I want to add two numbers, if I want to subtract a number, is the same as adding the opposite. And in plain terms, what this means. Let's say that I'm going to do the operation 4 minus 3. I want that you think in these terms. 4 minus 3. 4 minus 3. So if we understand that adding the opposite is subtracting the positive, so we can do the same here. I can just get the opposite. So it means that what I need to do is just add the opposite of 3. But what is the opposite of 3? The opposite of negative 3. But what is the opposite of negative 3? The opposite of negative 3 is going to be positive 3. So if you observe, when we're subtracting, what we're trying to do is to add the opposite number. So in this case, if I have positive 4 and I want to subtract negative 3, I want to subtract it, what I must do is to get first the opposite of negative 3. I'm going to get the opposite of negative 3. That is positive 3. And add it. So in this case, I'm gonna get that the answer is 7. 7. Okay? So adding the negative is the same as subtracting the positive, or subtracting the negative is the same as adding the positive. So this is why we have 4 and 3. So in this case, what we're observing is how subtraction is just adding the opposite number. So in integers, what we're going to do every time we work with integers, adding or subtracting, every time you're going to subtract an integer, what you're doing is adding the opposite. In this case, if the number is negative, so you're going to add the positive, and if you're subtracting a positive number, what you're going to do is just add the negative number. So in the number line, what we're doing is just putting one arrow right in front of the other. Now, but what happened if I want to find out two negative numbers? Let's say that right now I'm going to do negative 3 minus 5. I want to do this operation. Negative 3 minus 5. Let's imagine. I want that you think what will be negative 3 minus 5. Pause the video and think. Now, if you observe negative 3 is going to be this number, and I want to put right next to it negative 5. So I'm going to put here -5, -5. But if you remember that subtracting the positive is the same as adding the negative, it will be just put right next to -3, -5. Okay? So in this case, I'm gonna get -3 minus 5, or -3 plus -5. Both are the same. Remember that subtracting the positive is the same as adding the negative. So what we get here is just -3, and I'm going to put right next -3, -5. So in this case, we're gonna get -8. This is what happened when you subtract, or when you want to add two integers, you know? And finally, let's see what happened if I want to do another subtraction. Let's say that I'm going to do I have +2 -5. +2 -5. That could be seen just as 2 plus -5. Remember, adding the negative is the same as subtracting the positive. So +2 -5, what's going to happen? If I do it in this way, I can see that +2, and right next to +2, I'm going to put -5. So I'm going to draw here my arrow, -5, and now I'm going to put my arrow right next to -2. I'm going to put right to 2, I'm going to put -5, and observe what happened. I'm gonna get -3. -3. -3. Now observe that with these examples, we have been observed what happens if I add or subtract different integers. So what I'm observing is what happens if we add or subtract different integers. The question is, according to this video, if you want to repeat it many times if you need, according to this video, can we get general ideas to add or subtract integers? What would be the general ideas to add or subtract integers? For example, try to describe, according to this video, and doing arrows and doing many exercises, try to describe a general rule when you want to add two negative numbers. So you have a negative number and you want to add it with another negative number. What will happen to the answer? First, the answer will be positive or negative. Second part to describe, the answer is going to be the addition of the absolute value or the subtraction of the absolute values. Think in terms of these ideas. For example, what happens if you have a negative number plus a positive number? What will happen to the answer? Is going to be positive or is going to be negative? And what you must do to the absolute values? You must add the absolute values or you must subtract the absolute values. Or imagine what happens if you have a positive number plus a negative number. Same question. Did the answer will be positive or the answer will be negative? And what you must do to the absolute values? You must add the absolute values or you must subtract the absolute values. And you must also think in terms of subtractions of different numbers. However, observe that these ideas are general if you remember that adding the negative is the same as subtracting the positive, and adding the positive is the same as subtracting the negative. So in plain terms, these ideas here can be seen here as well, because what you did here in these two or in these three is going to be general to any of these. But we're not going to discuss about these general rules right now. I want to discuss it in another video, but I want that you think what could be these ideas, these general rules, write them in comments, and according to your comments, we're going to create a new video explaining and your descriptions. See you in the next video, and I hope that you understand an idea of how to add integers and how to use arrows to add these integers. Comments, like, and subscribe. Bye bye.